Hello guys! It's been a month or something since my last video, and as I promised, I'm gonna show you the skill constructor today. But first, I'd like to share some news with you. This game now has a Discord server. Actually, I had big doubts about this. I was thinking it's too early. I wanted to create it only after the very first prototype. But this exact comment triggered me, so I went and created a server. And now I feel really happy about this. The people who come are also friendly, they ask questions, share ideas, discuss similar games, and will soon share their impressions of the first build. So if you wanna join, but miss the link on the Steam page, I'll pin it to the description. Everyone's welcome. The next thing is Patreon. Month ago there was barely nothing and no one. Same as Discord, I thought it's too early for someone actually to subscribe. But it happened. There's 7 awesome supporters who I really appreciate for. Both Discord and Patreon make me feel that this project is needed and awaited and make me work even harder. Thus, I started a new topic of weekly changelogs, in which every Sunday I describe everything I did during the week, share screenshots and plans for the next one. Last week I also gave access to a roadmap in which you can see all the planned features as well as ideas and your additional requests. So if you want to really follow the progress and be up to date with the latest news, then this is the best way to do so. In addition, your support helps me to buy assets and in overall stay motivated. Alright? Like the last time, I can show you a lot of Git commits since the last video, but better we'll skip this part and let's now have a look on the skill constructor I worked for so long and some other things that changed since then. First of all, now we have a selectable weapons. We can choose the type for the left hand, for the right hand, then we can go to the editing tab and with the new switch we can pick the model we like. I'll add in there bows and shields eventually, but the general logic is written. The next thing we have is a new animation tab. We can choose idle and run animations for now, and I'll expand this later by adding more types and obviously more options. And it's time to create the first skill. Let's explore the constructor step by step. In the middle, we can choose an icon from different groups. There will be more groups over time for swordsmen, archers, different magicians, and so on. Then the name of the skill, of course, and who this skill related with. Below we see the description that is auto-generated based on the skill mechanics we choose. Each line is already in the localization file for the future. On the right side, Basics tab contains general skill settings. You can set cooldowns in seconds or minutes for convenience. You can define the cost in mana or in health for some blood mage, for example. You can pay in constant values or as a percentage of the maximum. And the cast time, which is must-have for mages and healers. Everything, by the way, every option has a pop-up tooltip that describes what it does. Then we have the target type. You can leave your skill targeted or make it area of effect. As you can see on the left side of the window, there's a preview that shows the exact targets that the skill will hit. And you can also choose here for which target to demonstrate the skill. But we'll come back to that in a minute. Below the target type is the choice of which targets the skill can be applied to. This can best be demonstrated by the example of a damage around skill. If we can only target the enemy, then we need the enemy to use the skill. And if the enemy, for example, is somewhere nearby in hide, then we cannot use the skill to break the hide effect. But if we can use the skill on self, then we can try to break hide with the skill. We are not going to take any damage, because who exactly will take it is configured separately. Then we have a distance, and yet again, if we can only target enemy, then the damage will spread around the enemy wherever he is, but if we can only target ourselves, then we need to get close enough. Well, nothing stops you from using all the targeted ones. The last options is the radius around the target for such skills, and if it's possible to move when using the skill, because you don't want to use the skill that forces you to stay in place when you're chasing someone or running away. There were all the basic settings at the moment, And now let's take a look at the most important part of the constructor, the mechanics tab. The logic of skills is represented by triggers and effects. Triggers are determine the behavior of the group of effects, and they are also calculated first for safe checks. First of all, the triggers can be of different types. It can be instantaneous, over time, and active, and I'll tell you what's the difference in a minute. Triggers are also determine whether the skill will be magical or physical type effects, which affect stat that will be used to calculate damage as well as to calculate dodge or resistance. Then we have effects on checkboxes, and this is the place where you can define exactly who will get the effects regardless of who the original target was. Inside the trigger can be an unlimited number of effects. However, triggers work in such a way that if the target is evaded, for example, then all the effects of this trigger will be ignored. But for another trigger, a dodge check will be performed yet again. And yeah, there can also be an unlimited number of triggers. Alright, let's go back to what types of triggers can be. Instant triggers obviously apply all effects once and instantly. Overtime triggers impose a temporary effect on the target, which can be dispelled prematurely. It can be ticking effects like damage over time or heal over time, or it may not be ticking effects like dots, debuffs or statuses like stun, sleep and so on. The active triggers will apply their effects similar to overtime triggers, but very dependent from the caster. This trigger will spend a given amount of mana to maintain, can be disabled at any time but only by the caster himself, and will also be disabled automatically if the caster dies or goes beyond the range of the skill. Now let's look at all the possible effects. The damage effect can not only obviously deal damage, but can also restore health or mana depending on the damage done. For calculations, we can use the attacking stat of the character, whether it is physical or magical attack. Or we can do pure damage regardless of the characteristics. Or we can deal damage equal to a given percentage of the target's maximum health. Or, of course, use all of this at the same time. Next effect is heal. It's pretty obvious, and calculations part works exactly the same way as for the damage, but what we do see here new is the order buttons. The order matters, because if we use skill like that, then maybe we will kill the target before we can heal it. Of course, skills like this makes no sense, but for the other example, do we want to teleport and bash, or to bash and teleport, huh? The next two effects are similar, but affects mana rather than health. They are pretty self-explaining, so I won't stop on them anymore. The next one is Dispel effect. This one can be used for dispelling the given amount of buffs or debuffs. In addition to the instant trigger, this effect can be also used in an overtime and an active trigger. In this case, the effect will track new overtime effects on target and dispels them until it runs out of amount or runs out of time. In this way, you can prevent the application of new effects on target. Resurrection effect can also work in several ways. In addition to instant resurrection, it can also be used in an overtime or in active triggers that will resurrect the target if she dies. The last one in this list that can be used only on instant triggers is movement. You can move target to somewhere or self. Self can be moved to target, from the target, simply forward or backward. Same as target can be moved away from the caster to the caster, can be pushed forward or backward. Also, this teleport checkbox defines not only will it be dash or instant teleportation, but also, as the tooltip says, teleportation can reset the targets of those who have this character selected as a target. This way you can interrupt the casting of spells directed at him. Overtime and active triggers have several additional effects, such as buff, debuff, control and status. But let's take a quick look at the overtime trigger itself. In addition to the parameters already discussed, here we can adjust the duration of the effect in seconds or minutes for convenience. Below we can set whether this effect can stack and in what quantity. Thus, if several identical effects are applied to our character and their number exceeds the maximum number of stacks, then the oldest effect will be automatically removed. And there's also a checkbox that defines whether the trigger can be removed using the dispel effect or not. Alright, let's get back to the effects. Buffs and debuffs are pretty similar and can temporarily improve or worsen the characteristics of the target. You can choose from a large number of different stats, as well as change them to exact values or a percentage of the available value. The next effect is a control in which you can choose the different types. They all work similar to traditional RPG games. So, we have obvious stun, sleep, which removes with any damage, fear, which not removes and makes target flee, charm, which makes the target consider you as ally, root, which makes you unable to move and cannot be removed with any damage, freeze, works the same as root but can be removed with damage, silence and disarm makes you unable to use skills with magical or physical triggers, blind makes you miss half of the skills, and taunt lock makes you unable to choose any target other than the caster. A lot of opportunities for controllers for me. And the last effect at the moment is the status. You can also choose one of the pre-prepared statuses per effect. Here we have hide, which makes you invisible, and sight, which makes you see invisible. Unstoppable makes you ignore any slowdown or roots, invulnerable make you ignore any source of damage, unbreakable makes you ignore stun, immortal won't let your health go below 1, and the bodyguard make you receive all the damage instead of the target. I was asked a lot about summon effect. There are no such for now, but I will implement it with the next iteration of the Constructor update. The last thing I didn't show here is active effects, so let's take a look as well. Here we have a cost interval that defines how often we should spend mana or health to keep the effect active. And of course the costs in health or mana in constant or percentage values. Also, if we add, for example, damage to the list of effects, we will see two additional fields that define how often the effect will tick, as well as the maximum number of ticks before the effect is automatically removed. If we don't want the effect to disappear automatically, then the number of ticks can be made infinite. Almost the same logic applies to overtime effects, except that they cannot be infinite. We are now done with effects and triggers, and there is one thing left in the constructor that will also worth showing. This is the selection of animations, where you can get to by clicking on the edit button under the preview. Here you can choose animations to use skills, and also in the future you can choose effects here. All animations are grouped by categories, so I made this filter at the bottom to make it easier for you to choose. And that's it. I'd like to know what you think about this constructor. Did I miss any interesting effects? Write to me in the comments here, or there's a topic with suggestions in the Discord. Also, a frequent question is when it will be possible to play. So the first version of the build will be available to the Patreon subscribers soon enough. In it, you will be able to create your own characters, develop any skills for them, bring them into the world, and see how the combat system and your ideas work together. Right now I have all logics working, and the only thing left is to make characters clever enough to use skills when they need to be used. So consider subscribing if you're interested and if you want to support me and this project. Well, that's all I want to say at the moment. In the next video I will most likely show you the build itself. Have a good one, and I see you in the next video.